So we are today representing ourselves, our organizations, and the Chronic Care Collaborative. How many people know about the Chronic Care Collaborative? All right. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit more just so that you can talk about it when you go out on the floor today and talk to your representatives. The organization was started in 2007. It represents today more than 30 chronic disease groups who advocate for 1 in 4 Coloradans living with a chronic disease. That's a pretty powerful number, so remember that as part of your talking today. 1 in 4 Coloradans, 1.2 million people that we know of are living with a chronic disease right here in Colorado. So our mission is to provide a collective and unified voice for people living with a chronic illness, because together we are much stronger than any one person or one organization can do alone. So some of the things that we advocate for clearly are around healthcare systems, how to improve our healthcare transparency so that it is easy, that our healthcare system is easy to understand, that there are no hidden surprises. We're using our leveraged power to be sure that no one is discriminated against because of their illness. And lastly, we want to make sure that those that are affected by a chronic disease receive all access to health care that will support them in all phases of their lifetime and their illness. Okay, so in your blue packet, everyone got a blue packet? Kind of looks, yeah? Or you're sharing it. I want to talk to you about a couple of things that are in there. You have some talking points about healthcare issues that hopefully you'll talk to your legislators about today. And you also have these cards. These lobby cards are really, really important. We really need you to use these to go talk to your legislators. And what you do is you'll use this and you'll identify who your name is, you'll give it to the sergeant at arms. Your legislator will actually come out and talk to you. Now, there's a myth. We're all going to sit here and think, well, what would one person, what would that matter to my legislator? The myth is that thousands of people are here every day talking to the legislators about health care. That's just not true. You're the face that they need to see. You're the voice. It's those individuals. It's a few group of people that can make such an amazing impact on our legislators. So we really want you to go find your legislators. We'll help you if you don't know which district you're in, and ask them to come out. They love seeing people face to face. So I hope you will take advantage of not just being here to learn, but also to take the knowledge and go out and meet with your legislators today. Your voice will make a difference. So let me talk a little bit about the groups that are present this morning. And if I miss anybody, shout it out. So we have the Alzheimer's Association of Colorado, Linda Mitchell, president. We can cheer for each other, that's good. American Diabetes Association, Jennifer Kraft. American Heart Association, Erin Hackett. Come on, just. American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, R.J. Hours. Arthritis Foundation, Laura Rosazin. Scleroderma Foundation, Cindy Beslevier. I butchered that, sorry. American Lung Association, Melissa Polsinelli. Colorado Health Network, Joe McCormick. Easter Seals Colorado, Lynn Robinson. I just saw the Rocky Mountain MS Center, Gina Berg. And the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, Colorado, Wyoming chapter, me and Sharon O'Hara. So I'm going to just also acknowledge a couple of our legislators that are with us today. We have in the room Senator Cook, Senator Baumgardner, Representative Jossi, Representative Williams, Representative Janal, Representative Lepsock, and Representative Lee. So we thank you for joining us today. They're coming in and out, and so you may hear a couple more. I'll keep getting notes, and we'll say thank you for joining us, and hopefully you will see many more today. Okay, so I also know that we have some congressional and local staff from our congressional offices. I don't know if they're here yet, but Kyle Brown from Governor Hickenlooper's office, Annie Larson from Senator Cory Gardner's office, Priscilla Resendez from Senator Michael Bennett's office, Savina Messner and Andrea Odobe Trujillo from Congresswoman Diana DeGette's office. And I just want to give a little shout out. Representative DeGette, I just promoted her. Representative DeGette has been recognized by both the National MS Society and the Arthritis Foundation as the 2015 Representative of the Year for her amazing leadership with the 21st Century Cure legislation, which will benefit all of us. So thank you to Representative DeGette. And by now, we all know we have our beads. Mardi Gras. Well, we're past Mardi Gras, so we all kind of know a little bit about what our beads are representing. So we have beads of many colors. Each one of these beads are meant to connect all of us, to get us to know each other, and to understand our connections to different chronic diseases, whether we're living with it or have a loved one living with it. And some of us are wearing more than one color. So I have my orange beads, and I obviously am representing multiple sclerosis. You know, one of the interesting things is when I started, people always want to know, how did I get my job? Did I have somebody with MS? And I really didn't know anybody. Haha, so I thought, living with multiple sclerosis. The minute I started talking about it, within 30 minutes of announcing my job, people started saying, oh, congratulations, and oh, by the way, you know, my brother has it. Oh, by the way, you know, my cousin has it. So I think that part of our ability to use these beads to start our conversations in the halls today, people are going to ask you about your beads, and you're going to be able to tell your story. And as you tell your story, you're going to realize someone's going to go, oh, well, you know, I know somebody living with that illness, or somebody that has another illness. You're going to find such amazing connections. Hopefully you'll find connections in this room, and you're going to find new friends out in the halls of Congress. And what I really hope is that you'll also give some of your legislators your beads. So by the end of today, I hope to see lots of people walk in the halls of our beads, because there's plenty more. So grab a few extras and give them away. So that's the idea for today, is to use our beads as the conversation starter and as the opportunity to really connect with each other and with others. Okay, so now let me share our agenda. We have a fantastic panel and a moderator I'm going to introduce in a second, who's going to provide some really amazing information about healthcare breakthroughs happening right here in Colorado. The blue folders also have the bios of each of our speakers. And we really are going to try and keep things going, because we are going to have a tribute on the floor later on with Senator Newell. So I just want to make sure that we can get things moving. You will have an opportunity to ask the panelists questions during their presentations and talk with the speakers after the program. And don't forget, because I would be told I would be bad if I forgot, we want you to tweet today. I don't tweet, but hopefully many of you do tweet, because sometimes I might say the wrong word. So in your folder is a Twitter cheat sheet. And they told me I had to say hashtag, not pound. So our hashtag for today is hashtag chronic disease CO. Okay? Hashtag chronic disease CO. And there's more information in your packet. Okay, and then I mentioned that Senator Linda Newell, who's been an amazing, steadfast ally of the Chronic Care Collaborative, will be reading a tribute on the Senate floor after our program. And if you do want to see or hear it, you go up one floor and you go to the south to enter the Senate gallery, or galley. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator today, Emmy award-winning, I'll say that again, Emmy award-winning 9 News morning team member, Taronda Thomas. Taronda is a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and moved with her family to Denver in 2007. Taronda has been named Broadcast Journalist of the Year by the Colorado Association of Black Journalists, and we are just honored that she is here this morning, getting away from the studio to moderate our panel. So without further ado, Taronda, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. I like the 2-time Emmy Award winning, repeating that. I'm so glad that I could be here today because this is something that's so important for so many people, not just the ones in this room, not just those of us who may be personally connected, but like was mentioned before, there's so many of us who are connected through secondary or tertiary persons who are affected by chronic diseases. I was just thinking, as Carrie was speaking, that I could be wearing so many more beads right now. I'm thinking about all the people in my lives that are affected by cancer, by so many chronic diseases. And the two that I chose are two people who were closest to me, whom I lost this past year. My aunt, who had chronic arthritis for years and years, very debilitating, and my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's for 8 years. And I wanted to honor them today by wearing these beads. And I hope that the work that we're doing today and that we continue to do will help other people, maybe not to have to go through those experiences and suffer the way that they did and the way that our families have done from watching these debilitating chronic diseases. So that's why I'm pleased to be here today to moderate this panel, because I know we can make a difference. Colorado Breakthrough Panel. This panel is dynamic, and Colorado is proud to have some of the top healthcare leaders in the nation right here in our backyard. Our panelists are in the process right now of helping to change the game for all chronic care patients, especially people who have those conditions. This type of medical innovation could lead to improved health outcomes, reduce costs, and improve patient engagement. It could also provide hope for patients and their families, and this is why we invited them to join us here today. So I'm going to introduce you one by one to the panelists, and then they'll give a brief synopsis of who they are and what they do. While you're listening to that, if you have questions, if something pops into your mind, write it down, because we're going to have a Q&A session of about 10 minutes once the panelists are done. So if there's something that you really, really want to know, write that down, and they'll bring that card to me so that I can try to answer your question to the panel today. Okay, is this mic okay? It seems like it keeps cutting in and out, which is what my producer does when it's time for me to wrap up my story. So I hope I'm not getting the wrap cue right now. Our first panel addressee will be Mike Baselli. In 2003, Mike began his healthcare career by working with industry-leading medical device companies. After working in the device industry for 9 years, Mike's business expertise was chosen to co-found MedPassage.com. Now, since exiting MedPassage, Mike has been helping Prime Health. He has helped them expand their efforts across Colorado. Prime Health's goal is to coalesce all digital health stakeholders in Colorado and those interested in the market of digital health innovation. That goal will create a national leading digital health cluster within 5 years. That's the hope. Yet it was only while serving as a board member of Prime Health and a senior advisor to 10-10-10 that Mike fully comprehended the transformative potential of growing a grassroots movement that was intent on changing the U.S. healthcare system for the better. Witnessing firsthand in Prime Health the tremendous power that a determined group of physicians, entrepreneurs, and technologists could wield, Mike realized just how much more could be achieved if that power were harnessed, and that's when his vision for Catalyst HTI was born. Now in partnership with governmental, academic, nonprofit, and commercial organizations, Mike is developing a health tech innovation ecosystem in Denver's River North District, also known as Rhino. It will bring together digital health startups and Fortune 20s alike in the race to fix American healthcare. This is very exciting, and Mike, we're thrilled to have you with us today. We'd like for you to please share some of the highlights of on locally in the area of digital health, which is a term I'd not heard before reading about you, and how that technology really can be a game changer for patients, especially those with chronic conditions. Please welcome Mike Baselli.
Thank you, Taronda. First, before I get into the vision that Taronda laid out for not only our Project Catalyst, but our community at large, I want to ask a couple quick questions. How many of you have one of these in your pocket? Raise your hands. Now, look around. Keep those hands up and look around. This might just be how we revolutionize healthcare in our nation. Notice that everybody just put their hand up and has one of these in their pocket. Imagine the good doctors to my left being able to access care to you wherever you might be. being able to track your heart rate, your glucose through wearable technology like Fitbit and Jawbone. I'm sure we've seen people wearing those. That's digital health. Digital health to our community is any company with an IT component serving health, wellness, and healthcare. Let me ask another question. Did you know that the state of Colorado is the #5 digital health cluster in the nation today, with over 130 different digital health technologies across our entire state? Now, I don't know about you, but #5 certainly isn't good enough. We have amassed leaders from the political side of the aisle, academic side of the aisle, private enterprise, venture capital, entrepreneurs, software engineers, in the race to fix American healthcare and create the #1 digital health cluster in the nation, right here in Colorado, by 2020. And so what we have done as a group and as a project now called Catalyst, and you can find more out online at catalysthealthtech.com, or you can visit my website at mikebaselli.com. We are bringing together under the same campus, a city block campus at 35th and Brighton, pretty much across the street from the source in River North, a 350,000 square foot campus, bringing together the biggest of the big into the same environment with the smallest of the small. Imagine an Aetna, a Kaiser, a Health One, a Catholic Health, Humana, their executives working into the same environment as physicians, entrepreneurs, startups, legislators. Imagine what we could really achieve. But really, the secret ingredient in all of that is you. We must come together as a community and jump into the same boat, grab an oar, and row in the same direction if we truly want to fix what I call a national crisis, and that is healthcare. Another question, did you know that we are trending towards a $5 trillion crisis in the next 10 years called healthcare? And if we don't come together as a nation, it is my firm belief that it has the potential to put our country on its knees. Chronic care is very, very expensive to our nation, to our system. It's costly mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The comorbidities of chronic care or chronic diseases, they wreak havoc on our system. How can we come together from community members like you, to our legislators, to our entrepreneurs, to our private enterprise and Fortune 100s, the biggest companies on the face of the planet, to come together and create new technologies that are delivered right into your pocket to reimagine healthcare? So that's what we're doing in Denver, Colorado. We couldn't be more excited with the physicians that are involved and everybody else looking at changing healthcare at its fundamental core, right here in our city, right here in our state, that will then permeate across the entire nation. I couldn't be more humbled and more thrilled to work alongside Governor Hickenlooper, Senator Bennett, Diana DeGette, and others. Please know, these legislators, they do want to hear from you. These folks are on our side. This is one of the most collaborative communities in the nation, and that's why I believe our project called Catalyst couldn't be done anywhere else. I don't believe it could be done in San Francisco or New York or Boston. Why? The Colorado way is quite special. We take care of one another. We are here with welcome and open arms. Let's use that to our advantage. Let's use that as an opportunity today to go and address our legislators, to say now is the time to come together to reimagine healthcare. I appreciate everybody's time today and letting me come and speak. I look forward to working alongside all of you as we continue our march of creating the #1 digital health cluster in the nation by 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful job, Mike. It's so exciting to know that we're kind of on the cusp of being so innovative and such a big part of digital health, just like Colorado's now known for being green and renewable energy when no one else was doing it, when all those panels were out by the airport and people were like, what is that? Now everybody's doing it. We could see the same thing with digital health, so it's amazing. I'd like to thank a couple of our legislators for being here and just dropping in the past few minutes. Senator Gozman, Representative Danielson, and Representative Rosenthal. We appreciate your time and you coming here to listen to this message. I'd like to introduce our next panelist now, Dr. Kevin Dean. He's an associate professor of medicine at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in the Division of Rheumatology. Dr. Dean is a principal investigator on an NIH-sponsored clinical trial for the prevention of rheumatoid arthritis. It's entitled Strategy for the Prevention of RA, or STOP RA. Now, for this trial, individuals, including relatives of patients, they're recruited and they have blood markers suggesting that they're at high risk of developing RA themselves within several years. Now, these individuals will then be given a drug to see if doctors can stop the development of RA in its preclinical phase before even the first signs of it show up. This trial, Dr. Dean and his team think that they will be a large part in changing how medicine approaches RA and other autoimmune diseases as well. Instead of just treating the disease, doctors would look more at trying to prevent a disease, something that's an asymptomatic phase of disease, much in the way we look at heart disease. So that's something that's very exciting. Besides his work in research and clinical care, Dr. Dean's teaching activities include education of medical students, residents, and fellow graduate students. Dean, we appreciate you being here with us today. We know that roughly 1.5 million people in the U.S. have rheumatoid arthritis. So can you tell us about the research that you're doing and how it could be a breakthrough for those people who are suffering, but also, like we mentioned, people who have not even shown symptoms yet?
Absolutely. Thanks, Toronto. Thanks the Society here for allowing me to speak today. So I'll step back a little bit. So I'm a rheumatologist. I deal with autoimmune diseases that primarily affect the joints, and one of those is rheumatoid arthritis, but there's a lot of other autoimmune diseases out there, including lupus, scleroderma, multiple sclerosis. All these kind of focus on the same model where your immune system, which is normally your friend and helps you fight off infections and helps fight cancer, goes awry and starts attacking you. And rheumatoid arthritis attacks the joints, lupus, lots of things. So these diseases in aggregate affect about 8% of the population, which is a huge chunk of the population. The problem with these diseases now is we only really identify them and start treating them once somebody comes in sick. And so, for example, for rheumatoid arthritis, you show up because your joints hurt, they're painful, they're swollen, they don't move very well. Then we have therapies. We institute those as soon as we can. Other diseases the same way, multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, all these things sort of follow this model. You get sick, then you come and get help. It's okay, we have treatments for these diseases, but they're not perfect. We don't cure anybody. And by the time people actually show up with these things, it's already at a phase of the disease it's very hard to treat, and also damage has been done, so we can't ever get you back to where you were when you felt healthy. We're trying to kind of look at those diseases again and say, how can we do better than that? Unfortunately, diseases of the immune system actually start off years before people get their first symptoms, and we're able to, with a lot of these diseases, to find markers in the blood that say, hey, you might be getting something within the next 5 to 7 years. And now we can start thinking about trying to prevent something. Because as soon as you can identify it before it happens, then you can actually move towards prevention. I think Toronto mentioned heart disease, and that's a great model. Most of us don't wait around now until we have crushing chest pain and then rush to the emergency room for our heart attack management. We get our cholesterol checked, our diabetes checked, our blood pressure checked years before, get those managed and help stave off the onset of a heart attack, if that makes sense. We're going to try and move autoimmune diseases into a similar world. We've started with rheumatoid arthritis because it's one of the more common autoimmune diseases and it's so impactful on society today that's where we wanted to start with. Plus, it has very good blood markers. So I can take somebody, and if I find them with a blood marker, I'm pretty sure they're going to get rheumatoid arthritis within 3 to 5 years. And this sort of knowledge is across the globe now. There's 2 trials in Europe, and we're starting one here called Stop RA, as Toronto mentioned, where we actually find people with these blood markers when they are feeling good, intervene with a mild drug to try and block the process of ever progressing to a chronic disease. And we think that's the most exciting way to get at chronic disease, is to actually stop it before it happens. As you can imagine, there's a lot of barriers to this, because when you start focusing on people before they're sick, that means they're healthy. And healthy people often, watch my language here, healthy people often don't care about their health. It kind of takes you to get sick before you start thinking about it. We've done some focus groups here, and it was shocking to me. We asked people who are at risk for getting rheumatoid arthritis, what would you do to stop yourself from getting it? They weren't sure. They had to hear a lot of information. But if you ask somebody with rheumatoid arthritis, what would you have done the year before you got your first symptoms to stop this disease from happening? Basically, they would have done anything. Complete mind shift. So once you get a disease, you think about it differently. And people with chronic disease are the most powerful advocates for prevention, I think. Certainly, not only for themselves, their family members, really getting them involved so we can help prevent diseases. So we're targeting groups that have disease to get at their family members to help prevent these things, and then to move off into the general community to start really trying to get at these diseases, understand them, and prevent them. And we start with RA, but we want to move that into a lot of different diseases. I see it takes 4 pillars, though, to be able to do that. 1, healthcare has to be invested, and I think healthcare is getting there. 2, governmental agencies need to be invested. It takes a completely different mindset to try and prevent disease than it does to establish treatments for people with disease that exists. Different infrastructure. We have to get insurance companies and drug companies on board, because you use a lot of different things when you try and prevent disease and when if you actually have disease. So for example, you treat a heart attack that's acutely happening in front of you with a stent in the artery, but you treat it 5 years before that with a pill that lowers cholesterol. Very different. You got to think about those things differently. And finally, the most important part is getting at populations, because as I mentioned, people who are at risk for future disease don't really care about it as much as those who have it. How do we get at the general population so we can really implement these strategies so we can actually make chronic diseases, or at least many of them, a thing of the past where they actually don't develop? So I think groups like this are crucial to this, groups like the Arthritis Foundation, who is a key part of us going out and finding people to prevent rheumatoid arthritis in. Other things that are special to Colorado, you guys know about the 9 Health Fair? You know, hundreds of thousands of people are evaluated every year in the 9 Health Fair here in Colorado. It's a great way to get at the general population for prevention. So all these things kind of coalesced here in Colorado to be able to help us at least be the leading site for this rheumatoid arthritis prevention. I hope that'll be a spark that catches fire. Next thing you know, we're going to be moving to other autoimmune diseases and other diseases in general. That'll really fit this model nicely. So thank you. Thanks for your attention. I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you. Boy, it's just, I really just was itching to hear more. I was kind of just sitting there forgetting that I had to moderate because I'm leaning in listening to you, but that's really fascinating. I'm so glad that we're able to discuss this so early today. We wanted to let you know that there are volunteers out right now with cards, like little note cards, kind of right in this room. So they're handing out those cards. You can write your questions on them. If you heard them say something that you just want to know more about, if Mike mentioned something you want him to elaborate on, Dr. Dean as well, just write it down on those cards and we'll try to get to it during our Q&A session. And don't forget to tweet. I was just tweeting.
Tweet right now.
Yeah, keep tweeting. Did you see what I tweeted? Oh, I didn't know you have your handle, but your picture's on there.
Not to retweet it.
Okay, retweet that tweet. Hit the pound sign.
Got it.
Don't forget that. Okay, now let's meet our last, as you work on those questions too, Dr. Huntington Potter. Dr. Huntington Potter is Professor of Neurology and Director of the Alzheimer's Disease Programs in the Department of Neurology at the Linda Cernick Center for Down Syndrome at the University of Colorado, Denver. He is devoted to something that is just amazing, studying the mechanistic relationship between Alzheimer's disease and Down syndrome, recognizing that the two disorders are kind of two sides of the same coin, and studying them together, he thinks will best hasten the development of new treatments for both of them. Before joining UC Denver, Dr. Potter studied, researched, and taught Harvard University. He taught for 30 years there. From 2004 to 2008, he was CEO and Scientific Director of the Johnny B. Bird Senior Alzheimer's Center and Research Institute at the University of South Florida. During that time, the Institute built the largest freestanding Alzheimer's disease research institute in the entire world, and they developed 7 new treatments for Alzheimer's disease in preparation for human trials. Dr. Potter, we are happy to have you here. I have to say personally, I'm grateful for your research and thank you for all that you're already doing. Among the top 10 leading causes of death in the U.S., this is so disheartening. Alzheimer's is the one that cannot be prevented, cured, or slowed down. What's happening now that could change that reality and provide something, some sort of hope for those of us who either have friends, family, are struggling ourselves, or even are thinking about the development, maybe develop one of us? So what's happening now that you think might be groundbreaking?
Well, thank you very much, Rhonda, and thank everyone here for coming out on a beautiful Colorado morning to hear about science and potential treatments and diagnoses for these chronic disorders that so many of us and our loved ones are facing. What I'm going to tell you about is about Alzheimer's disease, but as you heard, if we study these disorders together, we are going to get better insights into all of them. And I'll tell you about that in several instances that you'll find interesting. As Rhonda said, I'm very interested in the fact that people with Down syndrome almost all get Alzheimer's disease. So it's a very special human population for many reasons, but because they have an extra copy of chromosome number 21, they also have an extra copy of the main Alzheimer gene, which is on chromosome 21, so they begin to get the plaques and tangles of Alzheimer's disease in their teens and 20s, and by the time they're 30 or 40, their brain looks like an Alzheimer brain. And most of them develop dementia by the time they're 50 or 60. But it's all not bad news in the sense that probably 30% of them never develop dementia, and that's very interesting because it means that they may be protected. If we could find out why they're protected, we may be able to use that information to protect all the rest of us. So they would be the greatest gift to the rest of mankind and womankind by giving us insights into Alzheimer's disease. Now, the other interesting thing is that there's a very special set of humans, just mentioned, who have rheumatoid arthritis. And although it's not something that anyone would wish on anybody else, it turns out that they are about 8 to 10-fold protected from developing Alzheimer's disease. So again, if we study disorders together, if we row together in that boat that was analogized earlier, some of us are bailing to keep the water out, some of us are trying to fix the leaks, and together we hope to get to shore, so to speak. So rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease, and the original idea of why it was protected was that people with rheumatoid arthritis take a lot of drugs. They take drugs for their pain and their inflammation, and we know that inflammation in the brain is an essential part of the Alzheimer's disease pathway. So maybe that's what's protecting them. Unfortunately, great ideas aren't always right, and a big clinical trial of rheumatoid arthritis type Alzheimer inflammation drugs completely failed. But we had a slightly different idea, which was maybe there's something that's released into the blood of people with rheumatoid arthritis that's protecting them. So my new graduate student, Tim Boyd, went into the library, made me a very long list of everything that was different in the blood of people with rheumatoid arthritis that might give us a hint. And we narrowed it down, and we tried a few experiments, and to make a long story short, a particular protein called granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor. And no, there won't be a test at the end of the talk about that. It's a protein that is released into the blood in people with rheumatoid arthritis and stimulates the bone marrow to make more of a set of white blood cells. And some of these white blood cells are like little Pac-Men. They go around the body eating up things that aren't supposed to be there. And so we hypothesized that maybe these Pac-Men, or maybe the protein itself, could get into the brain and help the body get rid of those amyloid deposits. So I can still remember the lab meeting where we sat and looked at the data that we had so far. Nothing was quite working. And so I said, why don't we just inject these proteins that we were looking at, including GM-CSF, into the brain of an Alzheimer mouse and see what happens? And we did, and we opened the mouse up a week later, and half of the amyloid deposits were gone. That was the fastest, most effective reduction of amyloid that anyone had seen. We then injected it under the skin, and the animal not only got rid of the amyloid, but they became completely normal in the usual memory tests that we used in the laboratory. The most exciting thing is that that molecule happens to be an FDA-approved drug already. People who have reduced immune systems, or they've had a bone marrow transplant where you kill off all of their bone marrow and then give them a little bit new bone marrow, that bone marrow has to be stimulated to take over all the bones and make them a normal person again, and GM-CSF is given to patients like that. So it turns out that that means that we could start a clinical trial right away. Now, interestingly, our IRB, which is Institutional Review Board in Florida, said, oh, this could be a dangerous drug. We said, well, it's been on the market for 20 years and it's never hurt anybody. Well, maybe Alzheimer's patients are special. We have to be careful. And that's a very reasonable concern. So they asked us to show them that this drug had cognitive benefits in humans. Well, that's the test that we were going to do. So we had a little brainstorm. We went and asked the Moffitt Cancer Center, and there is another collaboration. You know, you can't work in a university without running into somebody who's an expert on something. And it turned out that somebody I already knew, because our kids were in the same daycare, had been studying cognition in people who had a bone marrow transplant. And she had discovered that they actually improved in their cognition. All of the chemotherapy they'd gotten had dampened their cognition. They were a little bit woozy. And then when they got their bone marrow transplant, they got better. So we said, well, maybe it was the drug that they took, the GM-CSF. And they said, well, we didn't keep track of that. We don't know. And I said, well, we're going to have to go back and look at all their medical records. They're going to have to re-consent to a study. And so then we had another brainstorm. We asked the patient billing records at the Moffitt Cancer Center who got charged for GM-CSF. And when we did that, we found that the people who got GM-CSF improved drastically after they got the drug and the bone marrow transplant compared to people who didn't get GM-CSF. That satisfied the IRB and allowed us to start the clinical trial. Luckily, we moved to Colorado, where we're now doing the trial in a much bigger way. So I use this as an example. We don't know the answer yet, but we're very hopeful that this drug will be a new approach to developing a treatment for Alzheimer's disease. But it couldn't have happened if we hadn't been at a university with other scientists next door that we could talk to. That kind of collaboration, just as the collaboration between these societies is important for lobbying and education of the public, the scientists collaborate too. And now, thanks to this kind of meeting, we're all collaborating together. We're all rowing together. Some of us are bailing, some of us are fixing leaks, and I really think that this is going to solve this problem. We certainly can't do it alone. So I thank you very much for coming. I'll be glad to answer questions afterwards.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. Okay, so the questions are already rolling in. Apparently, I'm not the only one intrigued and fascinated. Now, the first thing that we think of when we hear all these innovations, this is great, this is wonderful, gives us hope, and then we think about money, right? That is a huge barrier to so many people for healthcare and taking advantage of these innovations. And I have two questions that kind of went hand in hand from two different people. One asking, what can be done to make sure that the breakthroughs that we're hearing about, the possible medication that might come about, to make sure that they stay affordable and accessible to people? Is that in the frame of mind when you all are developing these things as well? And it kind of goes with the other question saying, how do you see overall technology, Mike, lowering the costs for the healthcare system and chronic disease management? So let's see if we can, you might want to divvy them up or address them all, but again, talking about how can we keep these breakthroughs affordable, and how can these technology breakthroughs lower the overall cost of healthcare?
Well, the first step to answering that question is to get the breakthrough. And once we have the breakthrough, it will indicate to people that this is a good approach and we'll have competitors. So this is America, where competition is good, it lowers prices, and I would expect that within 10 years we're going to have treatments for Alzheimer's disease that will be in competition with each other, they will be appropriate for different patients, and they will be reasonable in price. And of course, that is also, the goal of national and local approaches to healthcare, such as Obamacare, where it can be, hopefully, over the long term, a savings, where everybody can get treated. But the first step is to actually find the treatment.
In regards to technology, and that was a really good question because it is at the forefront when we're looking at these brilliant software tech entrepreneurs building these new technologies for healthcare, is how are they going to lower cost? Let me give you a perfect example from one of my mentors and an incredible surgeon here in our community, Dr. John Oro. Dr. John Oro is a brain surgeon out at the Medical Center of Aurora. And he treats patients with base of the brain, specifically base of the brain abnormalities. And he said to his leadership team, he said, after I get done with surgery with a patient who might live in Grand Junction, why does that patient need to drive all the way back to Denver, Colorado for me to look at stitches? Think about the time that patient had to take off work, daycare, potentially a hotel room, cost of gas, for a doctor to look at stitches. Now, I know that that's a microcosm example, but think about that across the entire industry. Let's go back to that very first question. Imagine right here in our own community, take a look at them, cirrusmd.com, a telehealth HIPAA-secure platform for a physician like Dr. John Oro to work with that patient in Grand Junction, Colorado, in real time, over the internet and over software technologies. That's how one way we can lower spend. Another couple ways, right here in our community, rxassurance.com, keeping patients on track with their Medicare, or excuse me, their prescription adherence. rxreview.com, and that's rxrevu.com, giving you as the patient alternatives to cheaper prescriptions. Pretty impressive. Caring in Place, take a look at them. Putting a care network around a patient, potentially an Alzheimer's patient. How does a brother and siblings and aunts and uncles take care of that patient? We can do it through technology. These are all technologies right in our own community. Nextstep.io. Their mission, eradicate diabetes, right here in Denver. These technologies can go across the entire network of healthcare and lower spend by meeting you, the patient, where you are at.
If I can add to that, in the world of prevention, there's a lot of economy of scale. So the more people you look at to try and prevent a disease, the cheaper you can make it per person to be able to ultimately try and get at that lower cost. So we hope that there'll be some inherent aspects of prevention that will allow for cheaper delivery of these types of interventions. So for example, if you have a blood test you want to test in 10 people and able to cover the cost, you may have to charge each person $100. If you test that in 100 people, each person could pay a much lower rate. We think that's going to really help with when we start to think about prevention. Now, there's a lot of tricks with that need to be worked on, but I think that's important. I do think it's a very important issue, though, with drug costs. I'm sure if you've watched any news, you've realized the cost of drugs are going up and up and up in the United States, and some of it doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of market economics. For our own personal trial for rheumatoid arthritis, when we started designing the trial, the drug we were going to use cost 14 cents a pill. By the time we got the trial approved, it was $6 a pill, which, if you do some quick math, it's about 42-fold, I think, if my math is right. It's a big increase without a lot of clear explanation. I think, not to undermine anybody or put myself in an awkward political position, I think sometimes we have to look at those things and make sure that our government is aware that these things are happening and how we can help that not to happen, to be able to continue to deliver high quality drugs at reasonable prices. And I think that's going to be actually a very important way forward. Finally, if I can talk to the technology, one of the major barriers we have with prevention is getting someone who may be at risk for disease to go out and get themselves tested for the disease. Because again, when you feel good, you don't go to the doctor, you don't want to go to the doctor, you don't want to even think about these things. But what if it was so easy that you couldn't help yourself? You could do this at a King Soopers or a Walgreens, where you could maybe get a finger stick blood test that would allow you to understand your risk for a variety of things. So this is, I think, where technology in the next few years is really, really going to help us, where people are going to be very easily accessing these things to learn more about their health and to be able to help make decisions about that. And right now, there's some startup companies that are having a little trouble because the technology's not quite there yet. or you can do finger stick blood tests for a variety of things. I think very soon we're going to see these things widely available where people will be able to check their own risk, their personal risk for disease in a very quick and easy manner using technologies where they're going to get a meaningful readout about what those results mean to them and what their next steps are. I think that's going to be a huge breakthrough in how we deliver this stuff to people.
Thank you very much. We're going to stick with you, Dr. Dean, with the next question. And before we do, we'd like to thank Senator Larry Crowder for joining us and stepping in today. Let's try something where I have 3 questions, one for each of you. So if we can try to work in all 3, that would be great. So Dr. Dean, this is specifically for you. This person writes, my mother suffered from RA. Where can I go to get tested for the markers? Because you were mentioning blood tests and how many people do that. And if I test positive, is the study, the clinical trial, located in Boulder? Very specific for you.
Gotcha. Do they have rheumatoid arthritis? I missed that.
No, this person's mother suffered from RA, so
perfect.
they're looking to get the blood test.
This is perfect. So rheumatoid arthritis and most autoimmune diseases run in families. And so the first people we want to get at to try and prevent disease is family members of people who had disease. So this is perfect. If you would like to come up to me afterwards, I can give you more information. Or if you want to go to a website, www.stop-ra.com, it'll give you more information. But please come up to me afterwards. Simple blood tests are right now being done at the University of Colorado, as well as a site in Boulder and in Longmont that we can do for this study. If you're positive, then we can enroll you at a couple of different sites near Boulder, here in Denver, and then down south in Colorado Springs as well. So lots of opportunities to do that. Does that answer that question enough?
Yes, very specific. Dr. Potter, what do you think of the recent Times Magazine article on the Alzheimer's pill?
The hope of all of us is to develop an easy-to-take treatment that's effective. And I read the Time Magazine article, and I was very pleasantly surprised that it was informative and correct and hopeful without being, overly hopeful. That particular drug attacks the disease in a new way, so we don't really know from past history whether it's going to work in humans or not. It seems to be safe. It looks like it works in mice. The problem is that mice are very easy to fix. And so it's only the human trial that will tell. So we're going to have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see, okay. Mike, this question is for you. It's a great one because we've talked about patients, but we haven't talked a lot about caregivers yet and technology. So this person asks, are there any applications that support caregivers' efforts to manage the care of a chronic disease or disability? Are there any apps that help with that?
Really great question. I mentioned one earlier, and I'll mention them again. Josh Fotheringham here is a local CEO and founder of an organization called Caring in Place. I believe you can find it at caringinplace.com. Being able to empower caregivers, whether they be family members or hired caregivers, through technology and digital app technologies. So yeah, we have some of those companies in our community. There are more and more apps in regards to empowering the caregiver being developed across the nation and around the globe. This is something that we must recognize, that technology and the power of a caregiver's hands can truly help empower the caregiver, which then can also really help elevate the care that the patient is receiving. So I highly recommend you feel free to head over to primehealthco.com, and about midway down on the website you'll see a View Directory tab. Click that directory tab, and I think we have about 115 of the 131 identified digital health companies in the state of Colorado documented. And you can see in there a number of platforms that can work with our caregiver community. Again, primehealthco.com.
Okay, is that the main website? Because someone was wanting a repeat on any digital health websites that you mentioned. Is that the main one?
Yeah, that's Prime Health is really the statewide convener for our digital health community, and that organization's website, yeah, primehealthco.com.
Okay. We talk so much about making things affordable. Oftentimes that decision rests with insurance companies. What efforts are being advanced to incentivize insurance companies to more quickly adapt and approve technologies and therapies? Because it's great that they're being developed, but oftentimes if insurance companies don't cover them, they're not accessible. So what do you know that's being done to make them more accessible and to reduce those expenses and health-related complications on the part of insurance companies?
If I can speak to that, it's an ongoing issue, and insurance companies rely a lot on published data to set their guidelines. And in the world of prevention, at least in rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm thinking going forward to treatment of Alzheimer's as well, you're going to need some pretty good studies that have showed, yes, we actually can do this. It's going to make it meaningful for insurance companies. So as we develop these studies, we are making sure that they hit all the marks that an insurance company will look back on and say that is important and we'll cover that. So for example, if it works that you can test a blood test for rheumatoid arthritis risk and then prevent disease, then we'll have all the metrics in place to say, well, it cost X dollars to get the test, X dollars to try and prevent disease, and then saved X number of dollars down the road because this person never got the disease. And then we'll be able to take that back to insurance companies. Again, that's something you got to work with them as you go along to make sure you have all the pieces that an insurance company is going to look at. So for example, for rheumatoid arthritis, it costs about $1,200 a month for Cadillac treatment of rheumatoid arthritis nowadays. Insurance companies well know that because they're paying for that. And if we can say it costs far less than that to identify someone at risk for RA and treat that and prevent the disease from ever happening, that's a great model that they're going to be able to look at and then support this. That's tough. You have to have good science behind that and make sure the numbers work. But insurance companies are well aware of this, and it actually ultimately will benefit insurance companies to get at prevention approaches for disease because it'll save the really, really high cost of somebody that's acutely ill with the disease. So I think it'll balance out nicely.
So keeping in the theme with cost, someone wants to know about the price difference with drugs and the fact that, for instance, this person is asking about MS drugs and some symptoms being similar to other autoimmune diseases, but MS drugs are more expensive, yet this person says we all have similar symptoms, but charged as an AIDS patient because of the T cells in the disease. So why, when disease may share similar symptoms that could be treated by a similar medication, does one cost more?
Complex question. Sometimes the same symptom has differences in underlying biology, and so they may seem similar on the surface but be very different underneath. And the ability to develop a drug to treat the underlying cause of that may be very different, very much different cost to arrive at that type of drug. So I think that probably explains some of this. Some of these are also economies of scale and subsidization at levels we don't quite understand. So for example, HIV drugs are very expensive, but those have been subsidized at a lot of different levels to allow for the cost per person to be quite low. Sometimes other diseases like MS or even rheumatoid arthritis don't have that same type of thing. So the actual cost of drugs may be looking a little bit differently. I can certainly talk about that offline a little bit more, but again, a similar symptom could be driven by very many different things. For example, you get a runny nose, that could be a cold, could be a devastating autoimmune disease. Fortunately, it's mostly a cold, but you have very different underlying disease and very different underlying treatments.
Okay, wonderful. And if you don't get your question in, because this will be our last question now, like as was mentioned, feel free to discuss with our experts afterwards, outside. They'll be accessible to you. And so many of these questions are so personal. Dr. Potter, someone wants to know, where's the Leukein trial right now, and have they started testing the drug on people with Alzheimer's?
Okay, so the Rocky Mountain Alzheimer's Disease Center can be found on Google or any other search engine, and there'll be information there about the clinical trials that are going on now and the clinical studies, which sometimes are just observational so that you get followed over a 5-year period or so, and are still eligible for clinical trials. And then we'll have more clinical trials from drug companies in the near future. So that's the first place to get started. With respect to the GM-CSF Leukein trial, it is ongoing now. We're still recruiting, and we hope to apply in the next couple of weeks for some larger funds to expand that trial. So it is ongoing.
Good. I want to ask one final question to our entire panel. We talked about Colorado just being such a big part of this innovation and leading the way for health. How can we continue to foster that? What's something that we can do to continue that growth of health technology, of the research that you all are doing in order to make sure that it continues on that path and help overall health development in Colorado? Mike?
Well,
Yeah,
one thing that I can say is that the legislature is already providing $500,000 a year for research on Alzheimer's disease. They're helping support the Alzheimer's Association in various ways. And so healthcare is really a nonpartisan issue. And so your best bet is to talk to your legislator and tell them that you're concerned, your friends are concerned, that this is, part of their job, and they will listen, I promise.
Wonderful.
From our entrepreneurial and startup community here in Colorado, we need you. We need patients. We need caregivers. We need concerned citizens. We need folks to continue to what we continue to tell our community, to bang the drum. Continue to bang the drum every single day, letting our nation's leaders know that this is a place to reimagine healthcare right here in Colorado. And all of you are a part of that. We have an opportunity. I'm telling you, I am in the boardrooms of Kaiser Permanente, Catholic Health, Health One. Those are the 3 largest health systems in the nation. I am meeting with those executives almost weekly now. Executives at Humana, Aetna, Anthem, United, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm meeting with those folks across the nation. They're hearing your voice, I promise. Continue to make it louder. Continue to make it consistent. They are petrified at where we are at with healthcare and understand that we cannot continue down the path that we have for the past 30 or 40 years. It will bankrupt our country. It's up to you to continue to put the pressure on them and continue to bang the drum with us. Join the fight. Come be part of our community, because if you are passionate about reimagining healthcare, please go and watch my TED Talk at mikebaselli.com, and you'll hear me say this. If you are passionate about reimagining healthcare, you have a seat at our table, and I get very passionate about that as well. I look forward to having you at our table as we continue to reimagine healthcare right here in Colorado.
Thank you, Mike. Dr. Dean?
If I can just echo that, it takes participation. From an NIH standpoint, any kind of project that a healthcare person thinks up, they don't go anywhere unless people participate in. And really, in terms of any kind of disease studies you do, and in our world with prevention, where we're actually trying to target healthy people, we need people to participate. And we certainly don't want to hurt people in the process of this or force you to do something you don't want to do, but understanding how people participating in prevention and trying to change healthcare is going to make all the difference, because frankly, it just looks good in numbers. If you have a new app and thousands of people use it, we have a study and thousands of people come and get screened to see if they're at risk for rheumatoid arthritis, that looks good and that fosters success. And I think Colorado is a unique situation in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of participation with groups here like the Arthritis Foundation. 9 Health Fair exists where we can actually use their resources to help draw blood to check for rheumatoid arthritis. All these things are in place that we can continue participation.
Thank you so much. And let's give a big round of applause to all of our panelists. Wonderful job. Great information. All right. Guess what, folks? We are right on time for our speaker. I mean, this is pretty amazing. I'm earning my money today. Wait, I'm not getting paid for this. That's okay. I don't want to. I think this is wonderful. I'm glad to be here. I'm so honored to introduce our guest speaker, whom I had the pleasure of meeting briefly right before this event, but have read so much about him. In the fall of 2009, Matt Ellefson was diagnosed with late-stage non-smoker's lung cancer. If untreated, he would have had 8 months to live. With treatment, he faced a 5-year survival rate of less than 5%. After an exhaustive and frustrating search, he found a clinical trial for his form of cancer in Houston, Texas. He spent 5 months living with family members in Houston while undergoing that extremely aggressive treatment. His wife, Melissa, divided her time between Houston and Sioux Falls, where their 5 children remain in Sioux Falls. Imagine how scary that is to have to leave your family for that treatment. Over the course of those 5 months, they faced not only Matt's cancer, but multiple life-threatening illnesses and side effects related to the treatment itself. Fortunately, the clinical trial was successful, and Matt's cancer went into remission. Today, Matt lives an active lifestyle just as he did before his diagnosis. It includes running and cycling competitions, speaking engagements, and exploring the world with his family. Matt's cancer is controlled by a targeted gene therapy that, get this, it's being done by physicians at the University of Colorado Cancer Center. Pretty amazing. Since his diagnosis, Matt has found strength in his faith and his family. He has also found his mission with Survive It, That's an organization that he founded in July of 2013. It is the world's first and only cancer care rating resource developed by a survivor for patients. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Ellefson.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today. I know that for a lot of you to come out in support of your cause for your particular disease is difficult for you today, and the people though that you are representing rely on you to do that. And me being a cancer patient myself, I know how much that means to me when other people come out and advocate for our cause. And so I just want to first say thank you to each and every one of you that have come out in support of your cause. It does make a difference, and don't ever stop doing that. I'd like to go back a few years to my story. It began in the fall of 2009 with just a cough. Having a cough in December in Sioux Falls, South Dakota isn't anything unusual by any means. Unfortunately, this one seemed to linger on a little bit longer, and one morning when I woke up, I coughed up blood, and it was a considerable amount of blood, and I knew something was wrong. And within a matter of hours, I found myself in a hospital bed being told that I had very advanced lung cancer and that I was facing some pretty grim odds. And I'm going to tell you that nobody ever expects to receive a diagnosis like that, and especially somebody that I would consider I was in my mid-40s. I was relatively young. I was active. I ate healthy. I had annual physicals every year. I ran in running competitions, and boom, I have cancer. It can happen to anybody. And what do you do when it happens to you? I thought we're going to do some research. We're going to find out where I can go, where I can find the very best in cancer care for my disease, and so that's what we did. My wife and my brother-in-law and I literally had 3 laptops out, and we started Googling, and we had a system set up, and we were looking here and looking there, and I was very, very shocked in what we found. I'm an engineer by degree. I love technology. I love research, and I know how to do it probably more or probably a little bit better than most people. But I couldn't find where to go for the very best in care for me. Every time we thought we were on to something that looked promising, we would find something that would discredit it. And we didn't know what was new and what was old. We didn't know which studies had follow-up reports to them. We didn't know how those patients were doing. We were lost. But we did know that we just had one chance at this. We had one shot to get it right. I wouldn't be able to go to a treatment center and it fails and go home and say, well, next time I'm going somewhere else. That just isn't an option. So through the grace of God, we did finally locate a clinical trial in Houston, Texas. And as she talked a little bit earlier about that trial, it was very aggressive. It was 5 months. And but the best thing of all is it did work. It did put my cancer in remission for about a year. And during that period, I wanted to take that experience that me and my family just went through that trauma of and fear and doubt and just uncertainty of what our future would hold, and try to do something about it and try to make it easier for other people. So immediately I started helping other people. And while I was helping other people, I learned an awful lot about cancer. I learned an awful lot about all different types of cancer, and I learned about how important it is to get to the very best in cancer care immediately, within the first 72 hours of being diagnosed. Knowing what questions to ask, knowing what tests you need to have performed, and knowing what your treatment options are available. Even if they're not available locally to you, knowing that there may be another treatment option a few hundred miles away or on the other side of the country, it doesn't matter. That's your choice to make, but you deserve the right to know that they exist. And there's no way of knowing that today, which is why we created Survive It. Because of the struggle that I went through and because of the series of techniques and technology that we used to try to find the very best in cancer care, I started talking to other survivors around America that were in a similar situation that I was in, were able to locate the very best in cancer care, are now thriving, they're beating the odds, they're living with stage 4 cancer, and they're out living a productive and active life, much like what I'm doing. There's many of us doing that. And so with Survive It, we've all banded together, and we've built a tool, much like if you ever want to go to a restaurant and you've never been in the city, you can go to Yelp and you can find a highly rated restaurant and read the reviews about them. Or if you're going to go on a vacation and you want to find a good resort, you can go to TripAdvisor and you can learn about all the resorts, and people write reviews about their stay, and it is extremely helpful. You've never been there before, and just because of what you can learn from any mobile device, you have an incredible time. But when it comes to your health, there's nothing like that exists, and that's just wrong. Why should it be easier to find the very best restaurant in town, but not the very best doctor for your disease in town? It shouldn't be. And so that's what we're doing at Survive It. From any mobile device, you'll be able to find the very best in cancer care for your particular disease. And you'll also be able to research your disease. We have a medical advisory board that has curated all of the current and accurate data together in one place so that you don't have to take the guesswork out of it. You don't have to wonder if it's current or accurate. It's always updated. It's always up to date. We also have the ability to connect you with a survivor of your particular type of disease. So you can talk to them. You can find out where they went for their care. You can find out what they're doing to treat their side effects and deal with their side effects. You can find out what they're doing for nutrition and for health and for fitness and all the things that they love to do. And then you can be part of that effort again yourself and reach out and start helping other people that are yet to be diagnosed. And that is what the survivor community is all about. We are survivors helping patients. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for the work that the fine people of Colorado do, because this is where I'm treated. I'm treated at the University of Colorado Cancer Center here at the Anschutz Medical Facility with Dr. Ross Camage, and the lung cancer team there is rated best amongst the world. I would put them up against anybody in the world. And there are pockets of teams around the country with not just cancer, but with different diseases that are doing these pockets of research, much like Dr. Camage and his team are doing with lung cancer here in Denver. They're all over the country doing different types of research for different types of diseases. That is cutting edge research. That is life-saving research that is critical for people that are facing a disease to get to that research. And that is what this is all about. That is what Mike and his dreams are all about, is providing that easiness of digital health and providing that access to anybody with a mobile device. So in closing, I want to express my gratitude to all of those out there that are trying to help people like some of us in the room today that are facing a chronic disease and want to live a happy and productive life. And I'd like to say thank you for everything you do to help us. It is just greatly appreciated. And I also would like to say that you have my word that I will do everything I can to learn from that and help others. Thank you so much.
My name is Laura Reisizen, and I serve as the president for the local the Arthritis Foundation. We are a member of the Chronic Care Collaborative, and on behalf of the collaborative, we want to thank you again for being here. It's been an amazing morning. We've had some wonderful panelists. We thank you all for being here. Your voice really does matter. If you tell your story and tell it to people who can make a difference, then you will be able to make a difference. And so in just a few minutes, we'll have an opportunity to do that directly with our state representatives. I do want to take a minute to thank some people who helped make the day happen. We want to thank our panelists, Dr. Dean, Dr. Potter, Mike Baselli. Thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. And Matt, thank you for sharing your story and for your courage and for creating a resource that will serve a lot of people. I think there are a lot of wonderful, inspiring stories in this room today, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away today and think about more specific ways that you might be able to share your story. In fact, we do have a request. In the back corner of the room here, when we adjourn, you will see some folks doing a videography project. These are our friends from We Work for Health, and they would love to hear your stories. If you have a story that you would like to share about yourself, about a family member, please stay behind if you can, and give a testimony. Tell your story to the videographer, and we'll be able to share that more widely in Colorado. Speaking of videographer and bringing attention to people who are around the state of Colorado who are living with chronic diseases, we want to thank Taronda Thomas for joining us today. For those of you who watch 9 News, you know that Taronda is very active in the community, especially in the field of health. I've had a chance to see her at some 9 health fairs, and she really does care about the issues that affect us. So Taronda, thank you for joining us today. To our friends from We Work for Health, Sarah and Martha, thank you so much for all you did to, they're probably in the back working, in fact, somewhere. Sarah Froelich and Martha Obermeyer really did a lot to help us put this day together. And we would be remiss if we did not thank Tim Bergman from the National MS Society, who did a lot to coordinate this day. Good job, Tim. Thank you. Okay, in just a minute, we will depart for the Senate Chamber Gallery. It may be underway. We may be able to still catch it, but we expect to hear a tribute from Senator Linda Newell to those Coloradoans who are living with chronic disease. If you'd like to see or hear her give that tribute that's being read on the floor, go up 1 floor to the south to the Senate Gallery. And I'm sure that there are people who will be able to give you directions. We encourage you to try to speak with the members of our panelists if you have questions, so you can stay behind in this room if you'd like to do that. We also encourage you to speak with your elected officials. This is your building. These are the people that you send to work during this legislative session. So please take the time to try to meet with them. There's some instructions in your packet on how to do that. And there will be people outside of the chamber who will be able to facilitate that and help you get more comfortable with how you can reach out to your elected officials. So try to find that lobby card in your packet, and we hope you'll be able to do that. We do have this room available to us for the rest of the morning, so if you would like to visit, again, we encourage you to take part of the videography project, be able to speak to some of our speakers, talk to each other, and share your stories. But thank you so much again for joining us today. The Chronic Care Collaborative appreciates your presence and your support in fighting for people
in Colorado who are living with chronic disease. Thank you very much and have a great day.